From the age of 3, I lived with wild dogs until I was 8, and I became one of them. Hello everyone, I'm Oxana Malaya, and I want to share my story. I was born in 1983 and raised on a dilapidated farm in a village in Ukraine. My parents were alcoholics, and my mother would beat me. I even remember wetting myself out of fear. My mother had too many children and not enough beds. One night, when I was almost 2 years old, my parents argued, shouted, and left me outside in the middle of the night, completely forgetting about me. To escape the heat, I crawled into the dog's kennel. I would talk to them. They barked, and I imitated them. It was our way of communicating. That's where it all began. The next morning, a neighbor who saw me sleeping with the dogs called the authorities. I was then taken into state custody and sent to a Soviet orphanage. In this orphanage, there was no control over the children, so more than one would escape, and no one would stop them. Behind the orphanage's gardens, there was a pack of wild dogs that I used to visit daily for several years. Until one day, I started living with my canine friends. Before long, I began to behave and act like a dog. I walked and ran on my hands and knees, walked on all fours, barked, and carried objects with my mouth. I would sniff my food before eating it, urinate lifting my leg, and even fight with other dogs for a piece of food. Over the years, my sense of smell, hearing, and vision developed quite significantly. I could see in the dark, hear from a distance, and smell like one of them. 5 years later, a shocked citizen who witnessed what I was doing called the police to report my situation. The officers couldn't believe it. I could barely speak, barked, and walked on all fours. After being rescued, I was taken to an orphanage again, where I was taught to walk upright, eat with my hands, and communicate with other human beings. I had experienced a trauma deep enough to seek refuge in dogs, and this experience had severely hindered my ability to communicate. Years later, I moved to a home for people with disabilities. Gradually, I interacted more with society, learned to speak, and could hold conversations with anyone. But I still carried traces of my past. I was uncoordinated, my steps were heavy, my shoulders swayed when I walked, and I would intermittently squint my eyes. Just like dogs, when I receive an object, the first thing I do is hide it. Even when I'm angry or upset, I go to the woods alone. My speech is strange. I speak plainly as if giving a command. There's no cadence, rhythm, or music in my speech, no inflection or tone. At the age of 20, I could imitate dogs perfectly. It's one of my favorite pastimes. Panting with my tongue out, shaking myself when wet, and barking with a guttural sound that doesn't seem human. Still, I'm quite vain, and I enjoy making people laugh. At 23, I saw my father again. We met at a clinic where I volunteered and helped with tasks. I wanted to meet my family. I was desperate to see them with my own eyes because I had always been told that I had no parents, but I do have them. On the day of my father's visit, I was very nervous, so I began to behave like a dog again, but I gathered my courage and faced my fears. I was able to talk to him. He even saw me milking cows and I showed him my bold barking. Experts say I will never be a normal person because a child's brain is highly impressionable until the age of 7, and these effects are impossible to reverse. Currently, it's believed that I continue to reside in the institution since I have no protection outside the clinic. I lack the necessary social or personal skills to live my own life. I can't form long-term relationships or understand give and take. I prefer fighting over compromising. I'm a very vulnerable person, so my psychologist believes that outside the clinic, I would revert to living with dogs again since my mentality is that of a 6-year-old. My story is so significant that several TV programs have interviewed me to create documentaries about my canine life. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next video.